Hi, welcome to FTD PreFilter. The FTD is in front of this because this is only used with firepower threat defense devices. The PreFilter is a layer 3-4 access list that happens or occurs before we hit the snort process. Let's go ahead and take a look here. So here was our access control policy. I do have inside hosts again, so when we were looking at this in the last section, if you were following along, in this case here, if I want to do show access lists, and let me see if I have that, exclude remarks. One of the things I want to look at is notice the hit. This is why we do show access lists instead of just show run. You get our hit count, right? So in this case here, we can see our hit count without the remarks. It's kind of nice, but it's hard to see. We'd have to kind of know what we had done in here. So what we want to do is come back up here, look at the pre-filter, and then which is up here, there we go, right to there, and we'll see this, add some rules in here and do our, see our hit count go up. So the way that we do this is we have to go under here and create the pre-filter. Then we put this in our advanced tab, don't we? Right here is where we add this in. So if I come under here, it's not where I'm going to go. If I come over here and I'm going to open this in new tab because I need to add this to my ACP. This isn't a very long section, by the way. There's not that much to this. So I should have opened it here. Here it is. Now it takes a second. When you say new policy and you name it, I'll say pre-filter. And then it sits here for like a minute, loads it, and kind of takes a minute. Once this is named, I can see this come up. See, don't notice this for like a minute. It's kind of odd, right? And we're waiting. Okay, there it is right there. But once I do that, I could add, I'll see it that it's added in here, and I should be able to add this in my pre-filter here. You know why? I do this so I don't forget, because a lot of times I save the pre-filter, come out here, save the ACP and deploy, and forget to add it. And it's easy to forget sometimes, right? You're doing a lot of stuff. Maybe someone's on the phone yelling at you, whatever. So remember, the default is non-tunnel traffic is allowed. And we're going to send it to analyze. We could say it block all tunnel traffic. Sure. And we could add some more tunnel rules. I'm not going to do that here. The pre-filter rules are pretty simple. They're layer 3-4 only. And there's 3 actions that we can take here. So the first thing is analyze. That's odd. So what we're saying is, hey, if I get this traffic, whatever I put in here as options, go ahead and send it to analyze. Well, why would I need to do that? Because that's the default, right? If I doesn't hit the pre-filter, there's nothing to pre-filter, it's going to go right to the snort process, right? So the thing is here's why. So I've done some really large migrations, sometimes with 10,000 rules from 5585s, 10,000 rules into a 4100, right, to FMC with 4100s, and we get 10,000 rules. Well, you really don't want to migrate all those rules. First off, you don't want to migrate if you can help it. Always try to do it from scratch. There was a customer I have that said, I wish I'd have just taken it from scratch. And in this example, the 10,000 rules, it would have taken 3 months to probably do something like that, but it took them 3 months anyways because it didn't really work all that great in the sense because when they did the migration first, before they called me, they had put it in the access control policy. You have 2 options. Add something into the access control policy, in the sense you can't choose which one. It's either pre-filter or your ACP. In this case, it chose ACP, didn't work. So we came back, put it in the pre-filter, it worked. Now you go through each and every rule, all 10,000 rules, yes. And we say, you're going to go to snort. You're going to be blocked and you're fast path. Eventually, some of those we take out and put them in the ACP, right, as we migrate that over. But to get started and get that up and running, that's why that analyze is here, or a reason for it. Now, in this case here, we can block. So what would I block? I don't know. Well, it kind of depends. Let's say that we have our router on an edge, and we have our RC1918 inside, and we're connected to the global internet. So we're a small company. Most of my larger enterprises that I do this with, you couldn't do this because they have a large private MPLS network all over the country. and everything's RFC 1918, so you wouldn't go around blocking this. So let's just pretend we have a small, medium-sized company, it's a large company, and we have a DMARC here. So we could say, hey, if it's RFC 1918, we want to block what? Block it from the outside, right, coming in, not the inside going out, right? So then I'll come over here to networks and say if the source, and we'll just choose Cisco's pre-made little group that's kind of nice for us there. Could also do something like VLAN tags here. If we were a transparent switch for sure. And notice we have our ports here. You know what would really be nice here, which I don't see, and that is the geolocation tab. Because geolocation, blocking all those guys here, making them, because they got to go through here, go to the snort process. We'll probably kill them at the security intelligence, or when we get to the rules, we have the block geo, right? So it would have been nice, but probably too much overhead. But in this case here, we can create objects, and now logging it, you can. It's just you're not going to get much logs in here because, again, this happens in the Lena process, doesn't it? So we'll get some. So in this case, if you could do this, sure, this is a great one. This is some basic old school ASA stuff, block RFC 1918 from the outside coming in. Pretty typical stuff. We're not going to be able to do that in this example, just like I can at most of my customers today. Well, that's an example how you would use something like this. Now, we're going to add some permits here, and I'm going to say, if it's coming from the outside in, and this rule I'm about to do, I don't recommend you doing at work, but I'll just show it to you anyways. Okay, so we're not going to analyze. If I did analyze, then, I couldn't log or anything because it's going to be logged in the snort process, right? So in this case here, if I fast path it though, so FastPath, if you remember, right, this goes right to egress. So we're going to skip even the layer 3-4 access list that's cached, and before we get into the security intelligence. So FastPath is good. So let's say I had some customers that have a lot of zones and they have proprietary applications, and I found that they were going from one zone to the other on the inside. It was just best to FastPath that traffic. It was an awesome use of FastPath. Allow RDP from out to in. Like I was saying, you probably don't want to do this at work, but it's going to be great for lab here. Okay, so outside to inside, and I could do networks, but what I want to do is ports on. I don't have, let's see, do I have remote desktop? So I could just type it in, TCP 3389. This is why I use objects, because I almost made a typo, right? So typically I'll make an object, RDP, TCP 3389. And the reason you do that is someone looks at that, maybe they don't know what 33889 is. And now if we use this object instead, now they would say, oh, that's for RDP, right? Doesn't matter now. We'll go ahead and log this. I'll do it on both. I wouldn't do that in production. I wouldn't even use this exact rule in production, but on something that I was allowing FastPath through without inspection, I want to certainly try to log it. We'll get some, depends, we get some things in the snort process analysis, but for the most part, we'd have to get it from the Lena. So pretty simple here. There's not a lot to this. PreFilter rules, let me save this. And then I noticed I was about to hit deploy, which is awesome. This is why I went down here and put this in first. Because a lot of times I'll save and save deploy. Now that didn't work. So let me come back here, and I didn't save my ACP that I put when I put that in. So I had to come over here anyways. Now let's try it. Now let's take a look here. Our access control and PreFilter. This is what we care about right here. Can I do this without any inspection interruption? The answer is yes. Why? I'm not restarting the snort process. I'm just adding my PreFilter, really. Right? Sounds good to me. So let's go over this just slightly more. There's not a lot you can do here. It's layer 3-4, but it's perfect. It's high efficiency to either block or FastPath stuff here. If you do a migration, then you go rule by rule and say you analyze, you block, and so on. So, we have the different network. We can use different network objects in here. We could, use our ports. And, so we want to block stuff from the outside coming in. Just, whatever you put on your ASA. So before we had the FTD, you just had ASA. Whatever you had in that access list there, you can put most of it in here for all your layer 3, 4 stuff, because you were doing the same thing. TCP established, not allowing RFC 1918 inside. Those are just some basic ASA stuff. That's what this is all about. So let's now wait for this to get deployed, and then we'll go look at the configuration again in the running config. And now we're back, should be deployed. Let's take a look. I'm deployed, looking good. All our health is good. Pretty simple. Pretty simple pre-filter. There's not a lot of pre-filters, right? But they're very useful. We don't have to use them, but if you have FTD, take advantage of some of it. Let's go out and take a look. Well, before we do, let's run out here. And remember, this is where we're at, our pre-filter policy right here. We fast path our RDP session down to here, right? There's our layer 3, 4 access list, right? So all this happens before we hit our snort process. Okay, now let's run out to our FTD box, do a show run access list. Probably we could exclude remarks as well. We'll take a look at that. Our show access list. Now up on the top here, as we can see, if I can find my mouse, here it is. And down to here is the pre-filter, right? So here's my object, the RDP rule that I put in. There's their ID that they use. So the rule name was RDP. Here's the name. And then we just have our regular default action, which says any tunnel traffic needs to go through network analysis. Then under here, we can see my access control policy and the rules down here, layer 3, 4, that is cached in here. Could do show access list. These full commands kill me sometimes. Show access list. And this is another way to see it. Let's take a look at this. So I'll come up here to the top and starts here. So there's my RDP. There's the object right there. But check this out when I do show access list. Now the next line, we have our object. Then the next line is actually resolving that RDP, right? Or that object, right? Into what the object is, EQ3389. Okay. And then we could do, to read this, maybe read this a little bit better, show access list. Let's do this. Exclude remark. Now it's going to be a little bit smaller. Now we don't always know what it is when we do that, right? But because without those are really helpful inside the FTD. But again, we're seeing the same thing. Maybe it's a little smaller, a little easier for you to read this way.